welcome, welcome, welcome everyone to tonight's Core Volunteer Training Program. It's a program created to help our supporters, especially new CCL volunteers, connect with each other around the larger world and empower all of us to achieve our larger goals for climate advocacy. This week's essential topic is engaging community leaders, and I'm your host, Brett Cease, and really want to thank you for joining us tonight. We know you all live busy lives, and this time together is precious, so let's use it well. To take us along tonight, we have a wonderful guest speaker, Dr. Todd Elvins. Todd is CCL's Action Coordinator and CCL's Grasstops Engagement Program Coordinator. For 10 years, beginning in 1988, actually, Todd teamed with Earth, Ocean, and Space scientists at the University of California, San Diego Supercomputer Center. If you have any questions about that, I'm sure you'd be happy to field those during Q&A too. But today now, Todd is CCL's Action Coordinator and leads our teams. All of the action teams work with him, and he holds a PhD in engineering from UC San Diego and surfs in his free time with the Dawn Patrol. So thanks for joining us today, Todd. If we've done our job well after the end of today's training, hopefully you'll walk away with the following threefold learning goals: understanding CCL's Grasstops engagement program and how to get started in your own local advocacy work, knowing how to prioritize and engage with prominent community leaders in your own network, and then being able to use the tools that we'll highlight to determine an impactful action with your own influencers that shows district support for the Energy Innovation Act and climate action to your member of Congress. To do that, we have a five-fold agenda. We're going to do a little quick review of where Grasstops engagement fits within the larger 5 levers framework for CCL. Todd's then going to be talking about the process for getting endorsements and how to prioritize those, as well as distinguishing the different types, especially now that we have actual legislation. What are the different types that are available, and then how to find them afterwards when they do endorse. And then lastly, we're going to connect all of this back to CCL's action teams, which Todd also oversees, and how to get started in those if you have any questions. So I will pass the baton to you, Todd, without further ado.
Great, thanks, Brett. So I'm going to start out with a story. I'm glad we got the slides fixed up. I don't know what was causing that problem. It was a couple of years ago, and I was meeting with an influential community leader here in San Diego where I live. His name's Don Mosier, and he's a prominent researcher and a retired city council member. And I met him for coffee, and he's just terrific. He is alarmed about climate change, so I thought, oh, he'll certainly be a person who will endorse carbon fee and dividend at the time. And I sat down with Don, and we had a really nice conversation, and I was just about to ask him to become an endorser of carbon fee and dividend, and he said, you know what, my wife is on the city's climate action committee. We should ask her if she would put forward a municipal resolution to the city of Del Mar. And so, of course, 2 months later, the city of Del Mar passed unanimously a municipal resolution endorsing carbon fee and dividend. And that endorsement reads, Dear United States Congress, I urge you, we, the city of Del Mar, strongly urge you to immediately enact carbon fee and dividend as put forward by Citizens Climate Lobby. Very strong, put forward by an entire city, unanimously by a city council. So this, the moral of this story is that, shoot for the stars. I was just going to get an individual endorsement, and I ended up with a municipal resolution, and I should have been more careful and a little bit slower to figure out what could Don Mosier help, what kind of endorsement could Don Mosier help me to get. So that was, that's one of my favorite endorsement stories. So let's go ahead and get started. You're probably all familiar with the 5 levers of political will. In your chapter, you have people working on media and lobbying and Grasstops and grassroots and chapter development. And this is kind of where Grasstops fits in. It feeds into lobbying, where you're going to go out, the people working on Grasstops engagement are going to go out and work with prominent community leaders for them to take actions that show that they endorse the Energy Innovation Act. So we're no longer doing carbon fee and dividend. We're 100% focused on getting endorsements for the bill. So, and we'll be talking a lot about that. So let's spend just a minute and talk about how do we know that Grass Tops works? How do we know that going out and getting endorsements from prominent community leaders and organizations has an impact on Congress? One way we know that is because the Congressional Management Foundation, which is a highly respected nonprofit organization in Washington, D.C., they tell us that just a handful of coordinated constituent Grasstops influencers can prompt an undecided lawmaker in Congress to take a position on a policy. So it might be the case that going out and getting endorsements from just 5 or 10 or 15 of your prominent community leaders could be enough to get your undecided member of Congress to take a position or even co-sponsor the Energy Innovation Act. Another way that we know that getting endorsements, Grasstops engagement, is influential in Congress is because of this man, Jay Butera. Jay Butera is a legend. He is a CCL volunteer, and he lives in Pennsylvania, but years ago he decided that Florida is ground zero for global warming, and so therefore Florida, we needed to really get things going in Florida. So he spent his own time and his own money traveling to Florida for months at a time, and he started out by going out and getting many dozens of signed endorsements from chambers of commerce and mayors and other prominent community leaders, and he brought those to the member of Congress's office, and he used that to get his meeting scheduled. And then when he went to the meeting, he brought with him 3 Chamber of Commerce presidents and 3 mayors. And this is in Congressman Curbello's office, who was a Republican member of Congress at the time. And Jay says, when I walked into Congressman Curbello's office with 3 chamber presidents and 3 mayors, it totally changed the conversation. And as we all know in CCL history, Congressman Curbello went on to become the Republican co-founder of the Climate Solutions Caucus, which is, as we all know, a very significant milestone. And by the way, former Congressman Curbello is going to be the speaker on our Saturday call in the month of May. So let's talk more about Grasstops engagement, our program in general. It's really based on the work that Jay Butera did in Florida, and we'll see that as we go forward and talk more about this in more detail. We also have now a bill website, and we're going to be talking about that. It's energyinnovationact.org, and if you haven't seen that, be sure to take a look. And that serves multiple purposes, and we'll talk about that in some detail. We also have something on community that's been around longer than the bill website, since the days of carbon fee and dividend, and that's called the Grasstops Engagement Tracker. And I'm not going to talk about that in as much detail as I used to, because we've really put a lot more emphasis on energyinnovationact.org. But I will cover that a little bit in a little bit of detail toward the end. I will say that the Grasstops Engagement Tracker is the place if you would like to use a contact management system to track the progress you're making with your prominent community leaders. You can use the Grasstops Engagement Tracker for that. You can also look to see if other people, other CCL volunteers have already sort of claimed a prominent community leader so that you don't butt heads or conflict with other volunteers who are going out and getting endorsements. You can also see all the existing endorsements in the Grasstops Engagement Tracker. Those endorsements are delivered monthly to liaisons and group leaders, and they're also available in a map-based endorsement reporting tool on community. All right, let's go over some definitions before we jump into too much detail. An influencer is a prominent community leader or an organization that will impress or has special influence on their members of Congress. So We're not, we might not want to focus too much on, the local bike shop, but we might want to spend our time really focused on those members of the community, the prominent community leaders who will have special influence or impress members of Congress. That might be the mayor, it might be other local elected officials, it might be the president of the hospital, the president of the Chamber of Commerce, the president of the Rotary Club. And we'll talk more about prioritizing prominent community leaders in just a minute. A delegate, the next vocabulary term, a delegate is a CCL volunteer who is the primary point of contact for an influencer or an endorser, in the same way that a liaison is the primary point of contact to a congressional office. So all the communications would go through that delegate. An endorsement, you might think of an endorsement as a piece of paper that endorses the bill, but it turns out an endorsement is a lot more than that. An endorsement is an action that shows that an influencer supports the bill. It could be an op-ed in the newspaper, it could be meeting with a member of Congress where that, as we heard with Jay Butera, where he actually brought prominent members of the community with him to a lobby meeting. It could be that kind of action. It could be a signed bill endorsement on the energyinnovationact.org website, or it could be something else. And we'll talk about that in a lot more detail. All right, so before you go out and start engaging with prominent members of your community, you're going to need to be able to talk about the bill in some detail, because those prominent members of the community, before they're going to be willing to take action to endorse the bill, they're going to want to know what it is that they're endorsing. So you're going to need to spend some time getting really familiar with the bill. And one really great place to do that is at energyinnovationact.org, which has a lot of great learning tools. So the first thing on that website, and I'll show you the website in just a second, are the 5 talking points. And so you're going to want to be really familiar with the 5 talking points so that you can just rattle them off without really even thinking about them. Enacting the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act is good for health. It drastically reduces emissions. It's good for the economy. It creates jobs, and it's bipartisan. So you're going to need to be able to rattle those off and maybe talk about them in a little bit more detail. You'll need to be able to talk about how the legislation works, maybe not in excruciating detail, but in a general level. And there's an infographic on energyinnovationact.org that has just the right level of detail for how the legislation works. So if they want to know how it works, you can show them the infographic and just kind of walk through that. There's a terrific document on community with frequently asked questions. What are people ask when people ask questions about the bill? You can answer with those kind of answers. And also responding to public questions is just a terrific resource for learning about the bill and how to answer questions from the public. So once you're ready to talk about the bill and answer questions about the bill and tell your prominent community leaders why they should take action to endorse the bill, then you're going to be ready to go out and engage with your prominent community leaders. And we've covered some of this already, but you're going to want to start by identifying prominent community leaders. Who are the folks in the community who are going to impress their member of Congress? They may even be in a different district than you. They're probably in the same state as you, but they may be in a different district. But your goal is to have them impress their member of Congress. So if you're aiming for a particular member of Congress, you need to find a prominent community leader who's in that district. So, and as I said at the beginning, you're going to want to prioritize the prominent community leaders who are going to impress the member of Congress. Maybe not the guy that works at the bike shop, but maybe the president of the hospital. Maybe it's a better use of your time to spend time getting one hospital endorsement instead of 5 bike shop endorsements. So once you've made your target list, and I might say maybe you would start with only a few, maybe 3 or 4 prominent community leaders. You know, make your list and make sure it's the right list. And then go out and start engaging with those folks, and start by you know, building a relationship. You know, don't you know, as the story I told at the top of the hour where I was meeting with Don Mosier, don't start the conversation by asking, will you endorse the bill? Start by getting to know them. Find out where they are on climate. Are they concerned about climate, alarmed about climate? Are they familiar with the impacts of climate change in the district? Do they know the member of Congress? You know, so you might actually run into prominent community leaders who are best friends with the member of Congress, and those are just terrific people to engage with. So spend some time building a relationship, ask a bunch of open questions, get to know them, find out where they are. Once you know all that information about that person, then you might be ready to ask them to take action to show district support for the Energy Innovation Act. And as I said before, it's a lot like lobbying. You want to go in with appreciation. You want to thank them for whatever they're doing in the community, being a community leader. You want to be respectful of their time, show them respect and appreciation and admiration. You want to meet with them often. You want to send them some updates. You want to make sure that they're educated, completely up to speed on the bill. You're going to want them to probably know a little bit about Citizens Climate Lobby and your position at Citizens Climate Lobby, as you are the most important part of Citizens Climate Lobby. You are the volunteer and you're a delegate to the prominent community leaders. You're going to want to be useful to the prominent community leaders, send them information, educate them, and you're going to want to reevaluate your approach frequently. Think about where you are. All right, as promised, I said that I would show you the energyinnovationact.org website. This is the welcome page, and you can see here that it's formatted very nicely, so it's not overwhelming. You land here and it just says a little bit about the bill, but as you dig down, you can find a lot more information. This website is aimed at not only your prominent community leaders, but it's also can be shown to members of Congress, the media, the public, and other volunteers who want to learn about the bill. The navigation is all in the upper right-hand corner. You can see that there are links to how the bill works. There's a link to news about the bill. There's a link to supporters of the bill. There's also another link that's not shown here because this is just slightly out of date. There's another link up there that's called statements, and those are statements from our ally organizations. So that's even more good fodder for the bill that you can show to people. Down at the bottom, along the bottom of the screen, you can see our 5 talking points. When enacted, this bill, the Energy Innovation Act, will be effective at reducing emissions, good for people. When it says good for people, it's good for people's health. It's also good for the economy. It creates jobs. It's bipartisan, and it's revenue neutral. If you were to scroll further down on this page, you would see color shiny pictures of all the current bill sponsors. I think we're up to 32 bill sponsors, and they're all pictured down at the bottom of this welcome page. So this is the endorse the bill page, and this is just a standard web form. It can be completed in less than 2 minutes. So, and all of our endorsements are completed online. In the olden days, we used to have paper endorsement forms. We don't have those anymore. All of the bill endorsements are completed online here on this web form. Your prominent community leaders can come here when they're ready, when they've learned about the bill and they've decided, yes, this is something that I can endorse. And yes, it's okay for everyone to know that I've endorsed. We no longer have private endorsements. All the endorsements are public. So they can come here and say, am I endorsing as an organization or a prominent individual, fill in their name and their job title, the name of the organization, the URL, their zip code, what type of organization are they. They can also do this on their phone. We get a lot of questions from volunteers saying, yeah, what if I'm tabling? And somebody comes up, a prominent community leader comes to my table and wants to endorse the bill. They can do it right then and there on their phone in less than 2 minutes. It can also be done on a tablet, of course. It's important to note there's some fine print over here on the left-hand side that says that this endorsement endorses this version of the bill and future versions of the House bill and the Senate companion bill when it's introduced and future versions of the Senate companion bill. So of course that raises the question of, well, how are those endorsers okay with that? And what we do is every time a new version of the bill, and we've done this a few times already, every time a new version of the bill is introduced, and when the Senate companion bill is introduced, which we hope will be before June, that would be terrific. Or maybe Danny said before the end of the year. These endorsements all apply to those future versions of the bill and the Senate companion bill. So what we do is we send an email to all of the existing endorsers, everyone who's filled out this web form, and we're up to 500. We just hit our 500 milestone, which is just amazing. We send an email to all of them to let them know a new version of the bill has been introduced. Unless we hear from you, we're going to assume that your endorsement applies to this new version. There's a couple of changes in the new version of the bill, or maybe there's an addendum, or the Senate bill was introduced and it's slightly different. So we'll include in the email anything that's different, so the endorsers can decide whether they want to continue their endorsement, continue endorsing the bill or not. All right, I've mentioned this a couple of times already. Be sure to prioritize your prominent leaders who will impress your members of Congress. So if you're out working hard in endorsements, you want to be sure that you're working hard in getting endorsements from people who will impress your members of Congress. And you're not out working hard and getting endorsements from people who will not impress your members of Congress. So these, I think I've mentioned all of these already. Some of the folks who will, and organizations who will impress your member of Congress are chambers of commerce, because those are groups of local businesses. And of course, members of Congress are always interested in what local businesses think, especially large local employers, because those large local employers are employing lots of people who vote. And they're also creating jobs in the district, and they are also paying taxes in the district. And so the CEOs and other executives of large local employers are terrific endorsers and well worth working on. Local hospitals, every community has a hospital. Hospitals are almost always large local employers, and so getting endorsements from hospitals and health organizations are a kind of endorsement that you might want to prioritize. And we talked about no, we haven't talked about local elected officials too much. So local elected officials could be mayors, it could be city council members, it could be county board of supervisors, it could be state senators, state assembly members, and other types of subnational electeds. And local elected officials are especially interesting because they often have connections and run in the same circles as members of Congress. They may even know the members of Congress. And so going and getting endorsements from local elected officials or asking them to take actions that show that they endorse the bill is a really good use of your time. The other reason local elected officials are interesting is because climate change is impacting their district now, and they're responsible for that district. And so it's their responsibility to work in the interests of their district and to reduce those climate impacts, to mitigate climate impacts. And so, that is a good way to kind of open the conversation. Climate change is impacting your district. And the third reason that local elected officials are interesting is because you elected them, and they're likely to take the meeting when you let them know that you live in their district or region. It's a pretty good chance that they'll take a meeting with you. And meeting with those folks, it's a lot like a lobby meeting. You're going to go in with appreciation, respect, and admiration. You're going to develop a relationship. You're going to tell them why you're there. You're with Citizens Climate Lobby. Let them know about the bill, do some education, find out where they're at on climate, and do all those things before you figure out what is the most impactful, impressive thing that they can do to show that they endorse the bill. That was a lot of information. I'll take a deep breath. Everyone take a deep breath. All right, so here are some actions. I keep talking about the types of actions that your community leaders can take to show that they endorse the bill. And here's a few examples. They can attend a lobby meeting, like we saw the example of Jay Butera bringing chamber presidents to a lobby meeting. They can attend an editorial board meeting with your newspaper. They can issue a press release once they've taken an action or endorsed the bill in some way. They can engage with their colleagues. They can also write an op-ed for the newspaper if they're a good writer. They can present at a Chamber of Commerce meeting about the bill or Citizens Climate Lobby or anything climate related, climate impacts in the district. They could also present at a trade association meeting, and of course they can engage with their colleagues. Wouldn't it be amazing if your chamber president said, well, I'm friendly with the CEOs of all the local, large local employers. So let's see if we can get them engaged and taking action to show that they endorse the bill. So that, of course, would be a home run. So I've alluded to this notion of types of endorsements. Of course, going to energyinnovationact.org and filling out the web form and hitting submit, that's one great way to show that a prominent community leader endorses the bill, but there's others. The editors at your local newspaper can write an editorial endorsing the bill. I think we're up to 15 or 20 of those now. You can see some of them on energyinnovationact.org. There's municipal resolutions. We're up to 100 municipal resolutions for carbon fee and dividend, and now we started over with the bill, and I think we're up to at least a half a dozen or maybe more by now, and I know there's a lot of those in the works. A municipal resolution is a resolution that is drafted and voted upon by the city council, and a municipal resolution could also be drafted and voted upon by the County Board of Supervisors, the State Senate here in California. We had a statewide resolution endorsing carbon fee and dividend a few years ago. I think it was, oh gosh, Assembly Bill 42, I think, which was amazing. Since California is, I think, the 5th or 6th largest economy in the world. And then, of course, there's public positions. So there are folks who have written on their website or recorded a video. Our friend Elon Musk recorded a video at one point saying, we need a carbon tax. So that's an example of a public position. All right, I've talked a little bit about municipal resolutions and how they can also be, there can also be county and state resolutions, which are a lot like a municipal resolution. Those are drafted and voted upon. School board resolutions, there's a kind of an offshoot of CCL called Schools for Climate Action that is just doing an amazing job of going around and getting school board resolutions. And they tell me that that's run by Park Guthrie, and Park tells me that a single email from a parent or a student or a teacher is sometimes enough to get a school board to draft and pass a school board resolution. That's just amazing. And those, of course, are impressive to members of Congress. There's also faith-based resolutions. We've seen the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, for example, has issued some very positive statements, not an endorsement, but a very positive statement about the Energy Innovation Act. We've also seen those kind of positive statements from an evangelical group and Presbyterians and Episcopalians. And you can also go to your local place of worship and get endorsements and ask the minister or the priest or whoever is the top person at your place of worship, ask them to take an action to show that they endorse the Energy Innovation Act. So I've probably said this 10 times already, but at the risk of sounding like a broken record, our overarching goal here is to show district support for the Energy Innovation Act to members of Congress. And of course, the members of Congress, they spend part of every day thinking about getting reelected. And so we want them to feel very confident that coming out strongly in favor of climate action and co-sponsoring the Energy Innovation Act is going to help them to get reelected. And so, and hearing from lots of prominent community leaders that there's lots of support in the district for the Energy Innovation Act will help to make them feel confident that they're going to get reelected. All right, let's shift gears just a little bit and talk about action teams. You may or may not know that CCL has 50, we just hit 50 online action teams. An action team is a team of volunteers, like an affinity group. And these volunteers are from chapters all over the country and sometimes even in other countries who have a common passion or interest, and they've come together online, kind of like a Facebook group, because they're interested in something. And some examples of our 50 online action teams are folks interested in agriculture or going out and getting endorsements from large businesses and working with large business advocacy organizations. We have an action team called Team Oil, which is made up mostly of people who used to work in the oil industry. Maybe some of them still do. We have a conservative caucus, which is an action team made up of sort of right-leaning and conservative volunteers. We have the Catholic Action Team, which went out and got that positive statement from the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. We have a Presenters Action Team, which is one of our biggest. I think they're up over 400 members now. The Conservative Caucus is over 700 members. We have a Higher Education Action Team. They've gone out and they've worked to get endorsements from university presidents as individuals. Endorsing as a university is difficult because the endorsement has to be approved by the regents of the university. So those are very few and far between. All right, let's take a look at our list of action teams and how do you get here? This is what we call our action team directory. And we're going to reorganize this here in the near future. It'll be the same list of action teams, but they're going to be grouped and categorized just a little bit differently. But the way to get here is to go to community, and on your dashboard, one of the menu options at the very top in the center is connect with others. And you're going to click connect with others, and a little drop-down menu will drop down. And one of the options in the drop-down menu is action teams. So click on action teams, and that'll take you through this action team directory. And on this action team directory, you're going to see, as I said, affinity groups, people who have called CCL volunteers. These are all groups of CCL volunteers who have come together to work on climate action from their passion, because they're passionately interested in one of these 50 topics. So I'll just name a few of these teams that are working on endorsements. I mentioned higher education. Those are mostly college students who've all come together to work on climate. One of the things they do is go out and get endorsements from professors and from executives like people like college presidents. I've mentioned business climate leaders. We'll talk about them more in just a minute. Coal country, not so much. We talked about some of these faith-based organizations. We mentioned Episcopalians, the Catholics. We mentioned the Presbyterians have a positive statement about the bill from the national organization, as do the Unitarians. Let's see. I'll skip down here to outdoor industry. Our outdoor industry action team has done an amazing job of getting endorsements from world-class athletes, including some Olympians who skied in South Korea in the last Olympics. Also, they have endorsements from a number of ski operations like Alta and Snowbird and ski operations like that, which are being hit hard by climate change. So they spend a good deal of their time out getting endorsements. And of course, we have the Grasstops Engagement Action Team way over here on the right under Skill Building and Support. So those are some of the action teams that are very focused on going out and getting endorsements. We're going to talk more about business climate leaders. This highlights where you can find business climate leaders and Grasstops engagement in the current organization of action teams. Yeah, that's interesting. We've recently just had some guidance from a social media action team that have a look at the social media of the prominent community leaders in your district and see if they're talking about climate. And if they are, put them on your target list for going and getting an endorsement. That's something I haven't tried yet, but I'd be interested to hear from others how that works. I have a slide here on business climate leaders. Business climate leaders started as an action team years ago, and they have become almost a separate organization. They have a steering committee. They have weekly meetings of the steering committee. They have sector leaders. You can see here that they have a list of 10 sectors that they're focused on. They are mostly focused on the big fish. And so if you think of large national companies like Coca-Cola and Walmart, business climate leaders has been working to develop relationships with some of those really big companies. And they also work with some large business advocacy organizations like Ceres and C2ES, Ceres Bicep. And so if you're really excited about doing endorsements, or there's somebody in your chapter who's super excited about getting endorsements from larger organizations, I would look into business climate leaders, and you can go to their website, businessclimate-leaders.org, and see tons of information. They also have a program that's called Go Teams, and the Go Teams are Grasstops outreach teams, and they have mentors who will help. Jim, you might be interested in this. The Go Team, the Business Climate Leaders Go Team, can provide guidance for your chapter Grasstops team to help you get up and running. They can provide some lists of large local employers and provide any sort of guidance and mentoring that you might need. All right, so this is a review slide. We've got about 7 minutes left, and I've said all of these things before, but the three main goals here are to prioritize, decide where you want to spend your time, and you definitely want to spend your time working on the prominent community leaders who will most impress your members of Congress. And sometimes if you've been in a lobby meeting, you might know that that's a great question to ask your member of Congress. Senator so-and-so, Senator Jones, who do you need to hear from in your state to convince you to co-sponsor the Energy and Carbon Dividend Act? And then you'll know exactly who to go and get endorsements from. So I mentioned at the top of the call that we have a database that we use as a contact management system. It's called the Grasstops Engagement Tracker. And there's a link to it right here in the middle of the slide, cclusa.org/get. And if you go there, you'll see a fairly sophisticated database interface where you can enter your influencers and track progress, track the progress. You can also look to see if, perhaps some other volunteers have already claimed prominent community leaders so that you're not colliding with other volunteers who are working on the same endorsements as you. You can also look to see all 500 of the prominent community leaders who have already endorsed the bill. So this is a fairly sophisticated database with lots of information. If you dig down far enough, you can find a list of large local employers in the GET, the Grasstops Engagement Tracker, and that will, that's a nice resource. So instead of going out and trying to come up with a list of large local employers yourself, you can dig down into the database and find that provided for you. And of course, once you're up to speed on the bill and you're ready to answer questions in the bill and tell other people the benefits of the bill when it's enacted, then it's time to go out and engage the prominent community leaders that you've prioritized. We have a help desk that's staffed by volunteers. If you have any questions, you can send any kind of questions to endorse@Citizens Climate Lobby or citizensclimate.org. They both go to the same place. And those volunteers will typically get back to you within a day or two with answers to your questions. You can also post in the forum on Community if you have questions that where you think that the answer to the question will be beneficial to lots of other people, then it's great to post in the forums on Community, the site-wide forums. And there's a specific Grasstops forum where you can ask questions. A lot of the questions we've been getting lately are, my prominent community leader submitted an endorsement and it's been 3 days and it hasn't shown up on the endorsement website yet. And so I gotta let you know, it sometimes takes as long as 7 days for an endorsement to show up on the website. So you've gotta be just a little bit patient. And I apologize for that, but we spend a lot of time verifying the endorsements when they come in to make sure that they really are who they say they are and they really are prominent, and that endorsement will impress members of Congress. And so that process takes a while, and so it might take as long as 7 days to show up on the endorsement website. All right, that's the end.
And where to find this in Community, where you can participate in the forums and keep the conversation going, and share this with your own groups. So on this slide here, you can see a little reminder of where to find the training topics in Community. It's just simply community.citizensclimate.org/topics. And all ahead, if you have any questions, it's just basically Todd@citizensclimate.org, and then my contact is Brett@citizensclimate.org. And the help desk, like Todd has highlighted, is just simply a nice, easy to remember endorse@citizensclimate.org. I wanted to close by saying thank you. The only reason why Citizens Climate Lobby and all of the success around the Energy Innovation and Carbon and Dividend Act is gaining any momentum is because of people like you. We hope that you found tonight's training useful. We look forward to supporting you and all ahead, and we can't wait to hear about the exciting stories that you're about to unfold in your own local communities.